Hello, everyone. Welcome to the latest briefing from Dealroom, this one on UK tech. My name is Orla, Browne, and I'm here with Lorenzo. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, nice to have you all here. I'm the head of research at Dealroom, and yeah, we work a lot on the UK. We released a couple of nice stuff recently, so happy to walk you through together with Orla and have your questions.
Yeah, exactly. So we are in the same place for once, which is quite nice. Normally we're dialing in. But yeah, as Lorenzo said, we've done a lot of work on UK tech recently and over the years, and we thought it'd be nice to consolidate it and show you some of the findings. Do let us know where you're dialing in from. We will also try and answer some of your questions as we go along. So I'll be keeping an eye on the chat. Hello to Richard, who is dialing in from South Yorkshire. But yeah, let us know where the rest of you are coming from as well. So yeah, without further ado, let's kick off. So yeah, this is what we're going to run through. We're going to have a look at, a little bit at not just venture capital actually, but the macro picture of UK tech journey so far, what's going on with venture capital, which things are raising investment. Then Lorenzo will take us through a bit on UK deep tech and spinouts, again relating to reports that we recently published, and then also some work we've been doing on the UK industrial strategy and IS8 and how we've mapped that against the data and companies in Dealroom, which is brand new. So that should be answering some questions that a lot of people have been asking us about in terms of the industrial strategy as well. So yeah, let's get into it. So first of all, UK innovation economy is worth over $1 trillion, so $1.3 trillion. So not just a small bit of the economy, but startups are an important value creator, growth driver, and generator of jobs. And what we're also seeing is that it's younger generations of startups that are also generating a lot of that value, so quicker than they were in the past. So it's really kind of a snowballing and accelerating phenomenon.
Yeah, the red part there, those are the last 10 years, and you see they're growing really fast.
Exactly. So those are the youngest cohorts of companies. And where the UK sits globally is basically third by kind of any measure. This is by that ecosystem value number. So behind only the US and China. But if you were to look at it by venture capital or number of unicorns, anything else as well, it's pretty much solidly third. Easily top in Europe and just behind those other two, albeit a long way behind US, but as is everybody else. And what is a big driver of that growth is venture capital. So these companies are largely VC backed. And what we're able to also calculate is that for every dollar or pound of VC input, there's a 5.4x return in terms of the enterprise value that's created. So that's a pretty nice return. And also, you know, if we were to look back at this growth chart of like 10x in 10 years of the value that's increased for UK tech, you know, you'd love that for any part of your economy or your economy overall. So it's a really important driver. And in terms of that venture capital, what's been happening recently? So this is from the Q3 report that we published with HSBC Innovation Banking. We do this each quarter looking at UK tech, and we'll have another one in early Jan, which will be wrapping up the year. But in Q3, we saw that by the end of Q3, UK startups had already raised as much VC as had been raised in the whole of 2024, just in the first 3 quarters. So it's a good year so far, and projected over 23 billion to be raised by UK startups by year end, and they're still kind of on track for that as well. So after a couple of, 3 years of like successive downward trend in terms of the venture capital, it was kind of the whole world had this big bubble in 2021 and 22, and then a sort of reset, but clearly coming back strongly, and still that overall long-term growth trend in terms of venture capital in the UK as well. And if we look at that on a quarterly basis, so Q3 was a really, really strong quarter. So 9 billion raised in Q3, the second highest Q3 on record, and only after Q3 2021. And so, you know, growth year on year and quarter on quarter and all of that. So really nice. What is also interesting to look at is if we break that out by the different stages of where that investment is coming from in terms of early stage, sort of pre-seed Series A, breakout stage of Series B and C, and that late stage, there was actually growth in all of those areas. So it wasn't just that there was a few really big rounds that was driving everything, but that things were quieter at the early or breakout. Actually, there was quarter-on-quarter and year-on-year growth in all of those stages in Q3, which is a really strong sign as well. And if we look at where the UK sits in terms of Europe, of like what does that represent of Europe's total? So 35% of all European venture capital raised by European startups this year has been raised in the UK, and that's pretty steady over the last 15 years here. So topping out at 39 and low of 29, but yeah, as you can see, fairly consistent, all while the sort of whole pie is growing for UK and Europe, which and for all global VC as it's been growing. And if we zoom out again and look at Europe's share of global venture capital, so it's about 15% of global VC is raised by European, including UK, because UK is still in Europe last time I checked a map, but is raised by European startups. And it's been kind of gradually growing over the years as well, with a little bit of reversal the last couple of years where we've
too much AI funding in the US.
Yeah, exactly. Some monster rounds for the likes of OpenAI, which, nobody's getting within an order of magnitude of that really in the rest of the world. But yeah, if we kind of zoom in on that dark blue bit again and look at UK share of global VC, so it has been gradually growing over the years. So 5.2% of all global venture capital this year have been raised by UK startups, up from kind of 3-4 about a decade ago. And where that investment is being raised in terms of sectors. So fintech has historically been a really, really strong sector and continues to be. So this is, again, the first 3 quarters of 25. Fintech was the most funded quarter, followed by health. But yeah, hosting maybe is a
it's
new
a
bit
more
in there.
tricky one. It's really data center and similar. I think there was N-Scale and some others. So that's a more newer topic, let's say, and sometimes borderline, but we do count some of these deals, the ones that are really equity, grow and venture capital, not like just the debt to build the data centers. So that's a newcomer, and of course, very strong momentum in the UK and in Europe, in the US. So it's a nice addition in there.
Yeah, exactly. So if we were to show you this chart any other last few years, you'd still see the same 2 at the top, but that's a bit of a new entry, the sort of infrastructure, obviously funding for the AI boom that's coming. And speaking of AI, so if we look at the share of SaaS VC in the UK that's been raised by AI SaaS companies, again, this chart from the report we did with HSBC Innovation Banking, so it's been gradually growing, almost 50% now of all SaaS funding being raised in the UK, being raised by AI SaaS companies, and those are a few of the names there that are some of the examples as well. And in terms of unicorns, so in billion-dollar companies and billion-dollar exits, the UK has produced 197 of them. So we are keeping an eye on when the next 3 will come, because that will be a big milestone. But only the US and China are ahead of the UK in terms of those number of unicorns. And I think that only 2 other countries have passed 100. So Israel and India have also got over 100, but nowhere near 200 yet. And in terms of new unicorn creation, so there's been growth the last 2 years again for the UK, where there's, I think 15 so far in 2025, more than 24 or 3. I also added a little note there as well, because we've got a new dashboard that's coming out. I kind of broke a rule. You shouldn't put something on a slide if there's not the sort of chart or data to back it up. But we have a new dashboard coming soon to the app. And it looks at where founders are from of these unicorns, and actually 87% of UK unicorns have at least one immigrant founder, which I thought was really interesting and nice
I think
stat.
we count here Europeans and immigrants, I guess.
Yeah. So if it's a French founder of a UK headquartered or founded unicorn, that would count as well. But
I think there was the case now 11 Labs. That of course it's a quite notable now UK AI startup, and the founder are Polish, and there's been it's a very nice story. But yeah, it shows that a lot of the UK tech scene is also coming from attracting this international talent.
Yes, exactly. And it's a similar thing that you see in a lot of other places as well, actually. But wanted to pull that number out for the UK. And a little bit more on unicorns. So 37% of those unicorns and billion-dollar exits are still private, but lots of them have gone public, lots of them have been acquired. So you get that kind of recycling effect of the value created by the companies, the investors being able to get their money back, as well as the founders and the employees where they've been given equity. And that's really what is able to drive the growth of these tech ecosystems. Interestingly, though, 20% of the UK unicorns are bootstrapped, which is a pretty high number. So of global unicorns, about 6-7% are bootstrapped, meaning they kind of didn't raise VC funding up to their unicorn marker. But yeah, 20% for the UK. A lot of those are sort of some of the older ones in the ecosystem. There's a lot more capital around now, whereas it used to be that you might have to get to revenue quicker and fund your growth that way. But I thought that was an interesting stat.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting 20%, to be honest.
Yeah.
That's quite a lot, yeah.
Yeah, for Central and Eastern Europe, I think it's like a third, which is...
Yeah, for Poland, it's even 60% plus.
Wow, yeah.
But yeah.
Maybe,
but this is changing with newer generation. They have more capital, so we are seeing less bootstrapped also in the newest, strongest rising. Yeah.
Yeah, usually
but historically
means like a lack of availability of capital, basically. But as well as those 197 unicorns, there's also 240 what we call thoroughbreds that have been created from the UK. So these are companies generating at least 100 million in revenue. And there is an overlap between those. Some are unicorns and thoroughbreds. Others might have $1 billion valuation but don't have those revenue numbers. So there's some deep tech companies in there, for example, Wave being an autonomous vehicle company, Isomorphic Labs, Nscale. That might have changed for them now, actually. And yeah, some overlap and some just on the thoroughbred side. But yeah, we increasingly want to look at these companies that have kind of strong fundamentals, generating real revenue, not just paper valuations as well. But we like to look at both lenses. And the UK is also really strong in terms of its venture capital ecosystem of investors. So of a ranking of the top performing VCs in EMEA, all of these red ones highlighted here are based in the UK. So
7, I think.
Yeah. But yeah, including those top 3.
The top 3, yeah.
So real quality of capital available to kind of local startups to get in touch with as well. Creandum, they were started in Sweden, but they've got a big London office now. And yeah, it's kind of Europe's capital of venture capital is now London and the UK.
Yeah, despite this, we will touch later that there's still some capital missing, especially at late stage. We have some bits on that later on, but yeah, it's definitely the capital of Europe for venture capital, but still there's room to grow, and there's the dimension house reform and everything. So we'll touch a bit upon that later.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I wanted to also mention that UK tech is not just London for sure. In fact, if we were to do that unicorn count by country again, if we were to exclude all London unicorns, the UK would still rank higher than France. So there's a lot of amazing companies that are built all over the rest of the country as well. And equally, London would still be ahead of Israel, India, Canada, just on its own. So an amazing hub in London itself, kind of number three or 3 to 5 in the world, depending on how you measure it. But incredible tech ecosystems are spread across the rest of the country too, which I think is important to highlight. And yeah, if we were to exclude London, as I've done in this next chart, so where else is raising investment? So Cambridge, Oxford and Cardiff this year, so again, the first 3 quarters, have raised the most investment, but a lot of rounds as well in Glasgow, in Edinburgh, and in Manchester. So as you can see, properly spread across the country. By the way, do drop messages and questions into the chat if you have any. We'll try and answer them as we're going along. We'll keep an eye. And yeah, I wanted to show you a little bit more about the UK's tech hubs and show you what is kind of possible on the platform, because all of the data that we're showing you today is from the Dealroom platform, and you can play around with it and slice and dice it whichever way you like as well. So this is a relatively new area of the platform, so under locations at the side here, and there's so much data that you can access. So what we can do is if we wanted to just look at some of those cities that I was mentioning before, we can narrow down. Oops, I've done the wrong one. Metros, that's it. And then we can also filter this by just UK. So this is looking at, at the moment, 285 cities in the world, but we can just look at the top ranking globally cities that are based in the UK. And so we've got a nice long list here. And I was playing around with it earlier, and one of the things I thought was quite cool is if we rank this by, so obviously we had it ranked there by ecosystem value, and London's at the top, unsurprisingly. But if we look at ecosystem value growth since 2017, actually York is top, followed by Windsor, Edinburgh, Cheltenham and Nottingham, all who have been growing faster, albeit from a lower base, but growing significantly faster in some cases than London. You can also look at it through a number of different lenses. So we can, if we go up here, see all of these different tabs here. So we can have a look at venture capital, and you can see how it's broken out by different round stages.
And maybe the sector strengths.
Exactly, that's what I was going to go to next. So we can have a look at sector strengths here. So there's a couple of ways that you can look at this. So first of all, we can choose to look at one city in particular. So let's have a look at Manchester, why not? And this will basically show you where you're over-indexing or under-indexing by sector compared to the city's kind of average performance. So we did a ranking of all of these global cities, and then we looked at it through these different lenses. So we can see that for Manchester, it's actually over-indexing in semiconductors, in AI, in food, in energy, while maybe space tech, I can't think of any space tech companies in Manchester, to be fair, or transportation or defence, areas that isn't so much going on. So it means that if you're working on a particular city or looking for hubs in a particular sector, you can kind of quickly see which are the ones you should be looking at.
Yeah, and to be clear, this doesn't mean that semiconductor is the biggest segment. It just means that there's more semiconductor in Manchester than relative to other cities. So it's like relative strength, let's say, which is it's not easy to assess, Typically you'd need to do a lot of, looking a lot of places, a lot of calculations. So we aggregated in this way. And yeah, it can be seen as this is where I'm strong and I can double down, or this is a sector that I care about. Why am I less than other cities? And then think about that basically.
Yes, exactly. And we can also have a look at all the cities at once and all of the sectors. So again, if we put in, I think I can filter for UK. Oh, here we go. UK cities. Here we go. So now we can see all those UK cities, and again, all of those different sectors. So you can see Glasgow is plus 46 on deep tech versus their overall ranking.
And especially space tech, because they have a lot of space there.
Yeah, also doing really nicely on AI, energy, and then let's find something that they're doing nicely in lots of things. Less good in crypto. There we go. But yeah, you can see really quickly an overview of which are the sector strengths and what to focus on, or which hubs you should be looking at for defense tech or whatever it might be that you're interested in. So yeah, we'll let you kind of play around with that in your own time after. But just to show, we do have a lot of depth on all of these different cities, and as I said, plenty going on outside of London as well. And with that, I think the next segment is going to be on deep tech and spinouts, which will be Lorenzo taking over.
Yeah, so recently we did a couple of nice reports that are quite relevant for the UK. One is the state of UK deep tech with the Royal Academy of Engineering and the Enterprise Hub there in particular. And then the European spinout report, where we had also three very notable partners from the UK: Cambridge Innovation Capital, Oxford Science Enterprises, and Northern Gridstone. So we call it Cambridge Oxford Corridor, and then the Northern Arc, where there's a lot of these nice universities: Manchester, Leeds, Liverpool, and Sheffield. So we're gonna present a couple of things from these reports, but there's a lot more, of course, to unpack. Like before, we said that UK ranks overall third globally. When we look at deep tech, that kinds of all done. We can see that it's still there, kind of double France and Germany. What I would say is that there's a lot of strengths in the UK. For instance, fintech is notably they're very, very strong in the UK. So we see that in the second to last column, we see that there's a bit less of the total capital that goes to deep tech in the UK. I wouldn't see this as a weakness, but more of as a strength of the other segments, let's say. But still, when we look at like per capita funding, there's still some way to go. UK is around half of Switzerland and also Sweden on deep tech, and 1/3 of the US. So we can be happy to see that UK ranks third, but there's no time to be complacent. There's more that can be unlocked. When we look at which sector the UK is most strong at, there's like particular strength in biotech and pharma, tech bio, quantum, and medical devices, while there's other segments that I think UK still has a bit more way to go, especially around some things in energy, some things in robotics for sure, excluding some stuff like autonomous driving. So there's, depending on which sector we look at, we see some strengths and some weaknesses of the UK deep tech scene. But what I wanted to spend one moment on is talking about, before we were saying how the UK investor scene is also particularly strong. We saw that the top ones in EMEA are based in the UK, but still when we look at where the startup in the UK get their money, we do see going to late stage that a lot of that comes outside of the UK. So in here you see three buckets: early, breakout, and late. And the early stage, we define this not looking at how they call the rounds, but just in this case, how much money was the round. So if the round was less than 15 million, we call it early stage here. If it was 100 million breakout, and then late stage is the big one, like 100 million plus. And we see that early stage, almost 60% is the UK. And then if we also put Europe in there, we're getting to over 70%. While if we go to late stage, UK becomes less than 1/5.
And yeah, we actually had a question which was largely positive findings, but what do you see as the current challenges for UK VC market? E.g. deal numbers still seem to be very low, particularly at early stages, and capital concentration with the largest funds. Well, this could be seen as one of the challenges, is that late stage capital availability, where UK startups still have to basically go overseas to raise their rounds. I don't mean necessarily relocating, but they're raising from overseas investors. And in terms of the relocation piece, that does also make things a little bit more likely. that a company will
for
move
sure.
as well.
Like when we talked also with some startup, the main, and we have this in the full report, in the UK Deep Tech report, a couple of nice interviews also of UK founder are relocated to the US. The main reason they cite for that is actually the market access. The first reason is almost always customers today, like if their main clients are in the US, or if they think they can break into the market more easily in the US, then that's the main reason to relocate, really. They cite, more capital availability a bit at all stages, especially late stage, as a secondary but important reason. But really the main one is more about market access and things like in regulatory and whatever. While they were mentioning as very positive the talent side, and even the one relocating typically like to keep quite a strong presence in the UK for the technical side or the talent side. So this is what also the ecosystem is telling us. Looking at the data, I think it's always a bit tricky to talk about number of rounds at the early stage for a couple of reasons. One is that personally, really don't like number of rounds as a metric. Probably I will get some people angry with this, but the number doesn't really mean much, because you can break the same rounds in 5 follow-up rounds sometimes. And if, for instance, in Dealroom, we have some rules internally. We decide to collapse multiple follow-on rounds into only one round in the platform, according to certain rules, how much time has passed, and a couple of other criteria. So depending on that, you can boost the number of rounds, 2-3 times. And also, we have to acknowledge there's a bit of reporting lag on the super small rounds and some other bits. So it might be that what you are looking at is not really the trend, but like some bits that the data are telling you. So there's a bit less also early stage number of rounds than 2021, 2022, when the market was really active, but some of the drop might not be actual real data, but like something around that.
And in general, UK is pretty solid at early stage, and things have dramatically increased in the last 15 years. Like the landscape has completely changed in terms of raising earlier rounds of investment. But yeah, it's at those later stages and the scale, being able to scale a company through those growth and late stages.
Of course,
trickier.
I think valuation we highlight in the report, they're like 30 to 50% lower or median round sizes, compared to the US, but so that's not like dramatic, at the early stages, but still something to keep in mind. Of course, some costs are lower, some not. Some talent might be a bit lower, but other costs are the same wherever you are in the world. So it still matters for competing globally. But I'd say we wanted to put a bit more spotlight on the late stage, because really, more than 70% coming outside of even Europe. That's quite a lot for all, also both like to get financial rewards out of the startup scene, to have for all the what we say about security, resilience, technological sovereignty, and so on, and also because this means that probably scale-ups in the UK have less capital availability in general. If you're really good, you can raise internationally, but if you have more capital available, they think differently about their growth in general. And so what we did in this case was also try to estimate what's the gap. There's a lot of assumptions that go into this. I will not all of them down now. They are in the report, but basically looking at the last 3 years, there was a bit more than 5 billion per year of funding in deep tech in the UK. And we were saying like a small amount of this was domestic funding, like 1.4 billion. If we want to get to similar to the kind of US type of domestic funding, that would be another 4 billion. And then the US startup tend to convert more to very large rounds and stages. That's partially because the ecosystem is more geared toward concentrated bets and a bit less spreading out than in Europe and in the UK, but probably also because just if you have a lot of capital available, it's a at a certain point you might still fail, but it's easier to get to certain stages. So if we look at all of this, it could be between 4 and 11 billion per year, just for UK deep tech. If we look at all UK startup, it could even be a bit more, if you're really ambitious about the startup scene, basically. And of course, there's some work, important work with some initial progress with the Mansion House mobilitating pension funds. We report on the progress in the full report, but there's a long way to go, and the objective even there are like on 2030. But it really matters if this happens, next year or in 4 years. That means a lot for some of the technological races that are out there. Yeah, and there's something very cool we did on Deep Tech is this also interactive tool, similar to what Orla was showing before on the location. In this case, it allows you to look at a single location in the UK or a single sector and see all kind of statistics around that. So, for instance, if I'm curious about what's happening, I can sort here like we were doing before by enterprise value or by the growth and put some parameter, but I can also just check one location and see what's happening there, see both the funding, the value, see the top companies, see some trends, and that's a nice way to to have a look at the whole startup scene. So I can see, what's happening in all of these locations and so on. We have sectors across industrial strategy, the typical sector we use, online maps, just, to tell you also what are the possibilities in using this data for more transparency. I'm gonna just go quickly through another recent bits that we did. So when we talk about especially deep tech, a good chunk of that can be coming from academia directly, what we call, spinouts that commercialize research. This is especially true in topics like quantum or photonics, a bit less in areas like robotics, defense and space, they're a bit more commercial. Also in all the life science, medical devices, that's quite strong, and also a more mature way to spin out academic research in a very, standardized way. And the UK is pretty strong at this commercialization. When we look at, the biggest cluster in Europe overall, definitely London, Oxford, Cambridge, a bit of the north of the UK, Scotland come up, and when we look at the UK overall compared to other countries, the UK has been leading for the spin-out value creation, which we analyze across, let's say, 6 metrics. We didn't want to use like number of spin-outs, like what happens in many other reportings, but we mostly looked at what's kind of the value coming out of the spin-out. So how many go to 10 million plus funding, how many unicorn 1 billion exits, what's the total funding, total value, and metrics like this can look at the value. There's still room to grow, because when we look at per capita as a way, for instance, to standardize by the sides, UK is still doing pretty well, but there's some of the Nordics are above him, like Denmark and Sweden, and Switzerland doing pretty well. And of course, some UK universities are among the top ones in Europe, Oxford and Cambridge leading the ranking, and then UCL, Imperial College, Bristol, all coming in the top 10. So it's for sure a good, there's a lot that's been coming up from UK universities. But when we look at more closely just at the UK, we see that the spin-out activity has become increasingly distributed. So it's not only, around Oxford, Cambridge, London, but we also see the Northern Arc I was talking about before, Liverpool, Manchester, Leeds, Sheffield. We see Bristol that came in the top 10. We see the Glasgow, Edinburgh, we see Belfast. So there's, in many places across the UK, this is really happening today.
Maybe an interesting little sidebar on some of these, though, is that we are tracking these back to their university, right, but not necessarily where the company is. So in some of these situations, there's a Bristol spin-out, for example, PsiQuantum, which is a massive US quantum computing startup. Similarly, Exscientia was a spin-out of Dundee, but I think they moved to Oxford and then ended up SPACing in the US possibly. So there's a lot of, this is kind of showing the amazing startups that are spinning out of UK institutions, and there's a different piece on whether that is being captured in the UK.
Yeah, no, exactly. So here the focus was, and also the map, it's a very particular methodology in bringing the startup in the institute they come from and deduplicating that. So this is not where they moved. Maybe, some big apps can be a bit of a magnet. And we also reported on this in several cases, for each union, for each city, how many stay local, how many relocate, and so on. This is also analysis that we run for clients or people interested. So that can be the other piece, how well you commercialize research, and then do this company stay or go? There can be slightly different, assessment that talk about, how well the ecosystem is doing different ways. And then we ranked, of course, also the top 20 in the UK, and we see a lot of diversity, in here. And of course, all of this is possible in the platform. You can see for each university or a city or, a region of the UK, you can see all the value created, the number of spinouts of different metrics, how many jobs, funding trends, and so on. So all of this can be explored in the platform.
Yeah. Do you want to show any of them now? Maybe we could show the newest little bit of about spinouts in the platform that we're able to do by location.
Yeah, sure.
Just added in the last week or so.
Yeah. So in here, one of the last features is to be able to, in founders, because this is where the founders come from, more or less. We have a lot of options around university. So in here you can choose, this is also related, for example, to alumni, but for instance on spinouts I can put, here, I like the UK or whatever, and I can show which spinouts are coming out of the UK in aggregated, and the same I can do for a single city, I can put Glasgow or I can put whatever I want. So you can then see, which startup they are without having to put the single institutes, basically. So you can just look at this at local level, country level, or whatever level you like.
So you could put in London and without having to put in UCL and Imperial and LSE and everything.
That was something that, people were telling us took a lot of time.
Yeah. So a small but useful little addition to the platform there. Yeah. We did also have one question about unicorns. Maybe I'll just quickly find the answer in the platform as well. The question was, from the total number of UK unicorns, how many are fintechs? So really easy to find out, because there I've just added the unicorn tag. I'll add in UK, and then I'll add fintech. And we should get our answer.
Around 1/3, or 1/4,
Quarter.
Yeah, a quarter.
A little bit more than a quarter. Bit more, yeah. So 56. So there's your answer. If anybody else has other questions, let us know, because we will try and answer them straight away. All right, nice. Okay, on to our last section then, and the industrial strategy.
Yeah, so of course, basically in Dealroom, you can use a lot of different taxonomy to navigate, what's happening in the startup scene. And particularly for the UK, we know, from talking with all of you and from our partnership that, you care a lot about the industrial strategy sectors that have been defined. So we also added those to our taxonomy. So you can mix up the two, use one of the two, depending what you need to do. So of course, this is for instance, a quick snapshot of the UK VC funding evolution across the 8 sectors. So we see that, for instance, in this year, digital and technologies were the largest sector. I have to say that there is a lot in there. There's a bit AI, quantum, there's hardware, there's software, so it needs to be interpreted a bit. Then we can see financial services that we were mentioning before, quite a strong year for fintech. Also here we can see that fintech was really big 2021, 2022, then 2 years of real suffering, and then it's coming back again. And also, of course, life science is quite strong. And you can also, of course, see this in specific locations and see how that differs from one place to the other. So if I look at London, of course, financial services are the top sector, and then there's some digital, quite a lot of digital and technology. If I look at Cambridge instead, life sciences dominates, followed by digital and technologies. And I took this example as a simple one just to say that also that digital and technologies can hide quite some differences actually. And so we are happy to, I put here some examples, but we are happy to guide you to look at the subsectors also inside here. So maybe in digital and technology, the strategy explicitly mentions quantum, semiconductor, cybersecurity, AI, and so on. So maybe your city or your region is stronger in one of these sub aspects. So you can also look at that specifically. So in clean energy, they mention nuclear, or they mention advanced material in advanced manufacturing. So we can break down and guide you now to benchmark also the subsectors of the industrial strategy, and not just the overall ISA sector.
Nice. We've got a few questions. One back on the spinouts, maybe it's going to be quickest to answer. So it's how many Cambridge spinouts are still based in Cambridge, and how can I check where the others have relocated if they're no longer in Cambridge? Yes. Do you want to maybe share that one?
So there's two ways you can use this bar, or you can just go on Cambridge. I'm gonna go on Cambridge right now because it might be quicker. Yeah. So if I click on spinouts here, and then we wanna see which one are not anymore in Cambridge. So I'm gonna put, not HQ Cambridge.
Yeah, we tend to use Cambridgeshire because there are some that end up a little bit outside, but you would still consider them the ecosystem.
Yeah, this is using the regions instead. So I think, bit less than half of them. Then we can see, where they are. It might be that some of them are in other places in the UK. It might be that some of them, are in the US or so on. So we see some in London, some have been, in the US, maybe after an acquisition, and in many other places,
Yeah, the other thing that we can also track is beyond spinouts, alumni-founded companies. So the example I gave the other day was Oxford have created 7 unicorns that are spinouts, but Oxford alumni have founded 80 unicorns, and 65 of those are outside of the UK. So there's these different lenses of university entrepreneurship that we can look through, from whether it's spinouts or the sort of student ventures. But that's also available on Dealroom and from the company's pages. We've got another question, which is about how about checking investors and service providers, banks, M&A, and lawyers? Can we find those details in Dealroom? So on investors, yes, we have the extremely comprehensive database of all of the venture investors. So here, again, we have sorted it by the ranking that we do of the investors, but you can also add filters onto this. So if you want to create a bit of a shortlist, so we can add HQ UK.
Yeah, you can add the stage, you can add the type and everything, and then like our profile looks like is a bit like this. You can see also a snapshot to understand what this investor does. Where do they mostly invest, which sectors, which stages. You can find all links here that send you to the recent deals, or which LPs they have, what are their biggest outcomes, like unicorn they invested in, and things like that. We also have recently released this tab that also some of our clients might not know yet. And this lets you filter everything you want. Kind of, if you want to search who are the top investors in a sector. So maybe which are the top ones that invest in health in the UK, and that you can do. You can search also a specific tag or whatever you want. So that's also something that's quite useful many times. So if you want to search investor specific to a certain industry or segment, you can use this feature. So these are, for instance, the top ones in health in the UK.
And maybe we could have a look at exits as well, since somebody asked about M&A. So we do track all of those. So whether it's companies going public or being acquired, you can see which ones have happened, what the value of them has been over time, who the acquirers are, and where they're based as well. If we're just looking at companies founded or headquartered in the UK, their exits, and then we can have a look at 2025 and have a look at their acquirers as well.
Yeah, and we did some analysis on this in the UK Deep Tech report, for instance, where we show that most of the acquisition come outside the UK, quite a lot from, of course, the US, but also some countries like in Asia, like Japan, and some European countries, but also that some UK corporates are active, acquiring abroad. So it's a bit of a nuanced picture, but you can check everything from this tab.
Yeah, in terms of the banks and advisors, we don't have those as much, but we do have the M&A and the VCs. And then we had another couple of questions. So how can scale-up companies be tracked on the platform? Well, that is kind of everything that's on here, I would say, is on the spectrum of startup, scale-up, grown-up. So you can set your own parameters of how you want to find them. So it might be that you want to look at companies with a certain level of funding. So if you say, I consider a scale-up to be any company that's raised between 5 and 100 million, then you could do that. And again, add the location filter for the country or city or whatever it is that you're interested in. You can add sectors, you can add just information about when they were founded, anything else. And you can also save the information. So you can save this as an alert. And then it means that you can return to this list, but also get alerted every time there's a new match for the type of company that you're looking for. So as soon as a company that's in the UK that's in AI that passes a threshold of a certain level of funding and that's been found in the last 5 years or whatever it is that you set up, then you'll be pinged as soon as there's a new one that matches the criteria. Or in what we were talking about earlier with spinouts, you could set a spinout alert and then be informed as soon as there's a new spinout from a certain university.
Yeah, it really depends what's your use case. Also, if from an investor perspective, many times we have a parameter on timing, we have parameter, when they last raised a round. So you can miss if you see something growing fast, they raised their seed, 6 months ago, maybe you want to engage early, checking if they want to raise again. There's all kind of use cases like this, but it really depends on your specific one.
Yeah, exactly. And then we also had a question about, are you planning to publish any industrial strategy research reports? And also the IS8 overlap quite a lot. So do you tag companies with multiple sectors where that occurs? On the first part, if you would like to work with us on some research on the industrial strategy, please get in touch. We don't have anything planned in the pipeline at the moment, but as you saw, we've got the data, so it's possible for us to do that analysis now.
Yeah, I think at the moment we started integrating all the different UK reports that we are doing. But yeah, we are open to discussing, doing something specifically on that. On the overlap, in the strategy itself, it says clearly to consider the overlaps in some cases not. So I have to say it's not the most coherent, thing. So for the moment, we allowed some overlaps, unless it's specifically said not do overlaps here, which there are a couple of examples. So yeah, but we think it makes more sense to allow overlaps than to be overly strict and not allow them, because otherwise there's like categories like AI, and that of course overlaps with, if it's AI for fintech, it will overlap with financial services. If it's AI for life sciences, it will overlap with the health and the life sciences part. So we need to allow some of those overlaps, but they are minimized, let's say. But yeah, if one wants to use this data, we can also help sometimes they duplicate and kind of try to report in a slightly different way.
Yes, exactly. And Richard says, looking forward to our South Yorkshire report next month, as us too. Okay, and then we've got another question, which is how do you classify financial service versus fintech? A very different business model usually and risk profiles.
Yeah, so what's in this strategy is defined as financial services, mostly what we call as fintech. Like we mostly tackle this looking at what the company is and what they do. So if you see here, many times we report VC-backed, that, typically if it's a VC-backed company in financial technology, and we consider that fintech. If you want me to go into any couple of examples, I'm happy to. I'd say there are some blurry lines. If it's an asset manager, nothing to do with tech, doesn't raise any, innovation financing, VC funding, whatever, we don't count it in what we are reporting here. Also, what you were seeing before, IS8 financial service, we were focusing on the innovation ecosystem. So it's kind of fintech what we report there. So there's stuff we don't consider in there, which might be just normal financial services without any kind of technology or VC angle, basically.
Yes, exactly. Nice. Any last questions? Get them in now, because we are almost at the end and only a few minutes left. But we are happy to continue the conversation. So we've got this link here. If anybody would like to book a demo and a session and have a chat to us about UK tech and your data needs, whatever it might be, then do follow the link there, and you can have a chat with us in January, probably at this point. We'll also follow up with the link in case you miss it. But thank you very much for joining us so far. Unless there's any other questions that get in the last second, I think we will wrap it up there. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. It's been a good session. We've got another of these briefings coming up in 2 weeks, which will be on building tech ecosystems. So do sign up to that one if it's of interest as well. And we'll be setting a few more for the new year. If you have requests of topics you'd like us to cover, you can let us know as well. And we'll see if we can get around to it. But thanks for joining us. We'll see you soon, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you all. Have a nice day.